Hello everyone, it's Jasmine and welcome back to my channel. Today's card is going to be this really fun 3D pop-up card. They're by Art Impressions and they have 6 different sets of these little critter pop cards. And what you do is you color, punch everything out, and put it together, and it creates a 3D mechanism within the card. So when you open up the top flap, it pops up the image. So we're doing the bee, and when you first look at this and do it, it's kind of intimidating because it can be a little bit hard to figure out, but that's why I went ahead and made the video, so hopefully it will walk you through the steps in an understandable way, so you don't have as much frustration, admittedly, as I did when I first did this one. So I'm going to be doing some Copic coloring, so I'm stamping using some Bristol Smooth cardstock and Memento Tuxedo Black ink. And this is a Copic friendly ink, meaning it's dye based. So if you're having trouble with I want to use a water-based medium, what kind of ink do I stamp in? The Copic markers are an alcohol-based medium, so you don't want to use something alcohol-based because it will dissolve it. Kind of like think about Copic, the colorless blender with a color, it dissolves and pushes it away. Well, that's what ends up happening on an alcohol-based ink when you use an alcohol-based marker. So you want to use a dye-based ink because it doesn't affect it. So when you're using a water-based medium, you want to use an ink that is waterproof so that it doesn't disturb it. So this is some really simple coloring. I'm using some Y markers and some C markers. The C's I'm using are C6, C8, and C9. And then the yellows I used were Y02, 08, and 17. So basically I'm just coloring the 8 and 9 on the outermost part of the bee and then the 6 in the middle to give it a rounded effect. So you want to keep the lightest area right down the center of your bee. And keep in mind that you won't see a lot of this. This is not something that's going to be on the front of the card. It's going to be inside the card, and it's layered. So you don't have to worry about any kind of little boo-boos you make or little mistakes. You'll see me kind of cleaning up some of mine because these are tight areas around the corners, or edges rather. So don't be super persnickety about it because you won't see a lot of this. I'm just smoothing that with my C6. And then with the stamp set, there are a few stamps that I'm not sure what they're supposed to be. And also with the dies, they don't fit properly. So I'm hoping that Art Impressions, I love that company. They make amazing products, but they kind of did a little bit of a miss with the design on this one because the dies don't cut things out properly. So basically I lined up the top of my die, like around the antenna, and then trimmed off the bottom, and you'll see that a little bit later in the video where I did that. Luckily these are pretty simple shapes, so the fussy cutting is not hard. I hate fussy cutting. It is my least favorite thing to do in card making, so if I can avoid it, I do. So with the dies, so here are the dies. So you see these little middle pieces there. Those cut out the holes that you need to do the template part. So the die at the top on the left, little t-shirt looking shape, that is your template die. That is the piece that you'll cut out and then fold, and then each one of these pieces will slide onto it to create the 3D pop-up mechanism. And then it comes with 1 die to cut out your wings, and then 2 dies to cut out your legs. And I'm using C8 and C6 on his little antenna. So you can see there that it doesn't quite cut out the bottom flush, so you will have to do a little bit of trimming. And then with the little fuzzy looking piece, that's I'm guessing like a little rough on the bee. That's the best I could get it to fit on that image. So again, you're going to do a little bit of fussy cutting on this. And then after I cut out the eyes, I trimmed off the top little tab there because I didn't like how it looked. When you, according to the directions, you're going to fit that in the top so it's going to sit back, but I didn't like how it looked. So I just trim it off, and then I attach the eyes using some foam dots. So I've got my little notes there. You're going to cut out 4 wings. There's only 1 die, and you cut it out 4 times with some vellum. And then you cut out the legs, 3 pair or 6 legs. So there's no stamp for the legs, there's no stamp for the wings, they're just dies. And then there's a little template. And you do have to buy the template die separate, but it does work for all 6 different versions of this pop-up card. So here I've got all of my pieces kind of assembled, and I'm attaching my legs and attaching my wings. So here is the rear end of the bee. This is the biggest piece and the back piece of it. So I attach my wings and my legs using a little bit of Tombow Mono Multi Glue. And then to get this template to go in there a little nicer, a little easier, you're going to take a craft knife and just run it up and down those slits that the die cuts, just to make these a little bit wider and a little bit easier to fit that template through. So you want to start with the little arrow ends, and then you're going to work this all the way back. So you're going to slide it on the first set of slits and go up, and then that will allow you to slide the bottom half in. So it's going to be easier to kind of figure out how to do it once you actually have it in your hands, as with most things. It's not hard. It just takes it's a little bit of kind of finesse and wiggling it around when you first break this bad boy open and start working with it. So you can see the difference between the two, the one that's just cut and the one you've worked with the craft knife through. And you do want to make sure that you're going with the craft knife from the back of the paper to the front, because that is the direction with which you'll be inserting the little template piece. I did glue on my little stinger on the back of my bee. So this little rough part is going to be the second layer. I'm attaching my legs and my wings. And then there is the head. And the head only gets legs. And I did fussy cut, so I trimmed off any white edges around my bee. And then with all of these pieces except the white rough part, I took a black marker around the edge just to clean it up and make it look a little nicer. So it's sliding that little rough onto the second layer. And then now we're the head is the final piece. So I did cut this template out of a little bit thicker cardstock just so it would stand up better to all the manipulation. So I've got my assembled bee, and Sandy Alnick has a video on these too, and she suggested doing this twice. Now, I didn't do it twice just for practice sake. I was kind of trying to figure out how to do this and how to make it easier to translate onto the video so I could show you guys how to do it. But it does help. Obviously, practice makes perfect, right? So if you do want to go through and do just a dry run of this, it might help you when you do it for real, to put in a card. So I've just glued down those little final bits with some glue, liquid glue, and then I've trimmed off the top piece of the eyes, and I'm going to attach those flat using some foam dots. And then I've just got some clear Wink of Stella pen on my wings, give them a little bit of shimmer. I'm sorry, that's Spectrum Noir, not Wink of Stella, but they're basically the same product. So use what you got, right? This is a honeycomb embossed resist cardstock that I got in a card kit years ago. So I was kind of going through my pattern paper trying to find something I could use for the background for my bee. And I come across this in honeycomb bee, kind of perfect, right? So I use my Distress ink Oxides to color the background of this because I knew it would give it a really cool finish. So I've used, let's see, Wild Honey, Spice Marigold, Spice Marmalade, not Marigold, Marmalade. Basically the 3 yellows that are in Fossilized Amber, that's the other one. So I've blended those on the top, and then I'm using some ink dipping to get some splotches and splatters on there just to make it look like there might be some loose honey running. And I'm heat setting that just for speed's sake. Oh, and I also have a little bit of shimmer spritz in there too, just to give it a little shine. And I wanted a few more just dots or blobs of color rather than a fine mist. So you can do that by taking your spray bottle, any spray bottle will do this, and depressing a little bit of pressure on the handle close to your ink, and you'll get bigger drops of water rather than a fine mist. So I probably have 3 or 4 layers of ink on this, and I thought it looked really cool. And then for a final touch, I just add a little bit of Spice Marmalade to the end, or edge. So I've cut that down using a stitch rectangle die, and then I've put score tape on the 3 outer corners. So I left the inner edge blank because I'm going to be cutting a little, I don't even know what you call it, little section in there to enable my bee to go up and down. So you want to kind of place it flat so that the wings don't stick out of the card when it's closed. And so what I've done here is I took my ruler and I measured a 1/2 inch wide section, and then I cut it a 1/2 inch deep into the card. So it's a 1/2 inch wide and a 1/2 inch tall. And I just took my scissors and cut that. And then I scored it on the top and on the bottom as best I could. And then I folded it in and trimmed off that little section of inked cardstock, because we're going to end up adhering a little flap from the bee to the inside of the card so that when you open that top flap, it pulls the bee up and makes it pop up. So I tried to come up with some hard and fast measurements for this, and it really didn't work. So my best advice for you is to do what I'm doing and not adhere this completely down to the front, so that you give that little arm room to move. And this is just some pattern paper that I have in my stash, and it has wood grain on the other side. So I got scored tape around the edges, and then I have just some tape runner in the middle, so that when I attach it and it's not perfectly straight, I can take it off and reattach it. It helps you to get your lines lined up properly, so you don't have crooked card fronts or weird edges. Then I took some ground espresso and ran it along the edges of the front of the card, just to kind of hide any white cardstock that was peeking out. And then I took an ink blending tool and really made sure that there was no white sticking out anywhere. So here's my little arm that's on the inside, and I've taken a scrap of the honeycomb cardstock, and I've rounded the edges so that it's got kind of free movement. It doesn't bump up against the front of the cardstock, or the front of the card base. So like I said, I've played with this for a little while, try to get it to fit just right. So like I said, I don't have hard and fast measurements for you. My best suggestion is just to try it out and see what works for you. So I waited until to attach that back of the template to the back of the card until I had the bee placed just right. And then I attached it to the arm. Then I want to dress up the front just a little bit. So I started with my sentiment, and this is just buzzing by to say hi is what the sentiment says, and it's from the same stamp set. And I kept it really simple, and I just stamped it using some black dye ink in my trusty Misty. And then I hand cut some ribbon ends in there, and I took some Spice Marmalade regular distress ink and just added a little bit to the bottom right in the top left corners, just to give it a little bit of difference, not all the way around. And then I popped that up using some foam squares. Now if you were sending this to a boy, I might not add sequins, but if you're sending it to a girl, then this might be a good addition. So I just took some Little Things sequins. This is Lucky Dip Marigold, so it's got a few different, it's more orangey and yellow gold tones, and then a few different flowers sequins in there. And I thought that the colors went well with the whole theme of our card. And I'm using some Ranger Multi-Matte Medium to attach those. So that finished up the card today. There are some pictures here at the end to kind of show you a little more of how I put it together. And thanks for joining me. Let me know if you have any questions. Give this guy a try. He's a lot of fun. And we will catch you next time. Have a great day, guys. Bye-bye.